Hey crafty friends, it's Jen from Katahdin Crafts and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I am lucky enough to be working with my friend Vinita at VinitaArt Digitals. Her shop is located on Etsy, and as you can see, this pack comes with a ton of different images. It comes in both a digital stamp format and files that are already ready and colored, and you can just print those off and cut them out and use those as ephemera. As you can see, the St. Patrick's Day set also has a cute little paper bag puppet file along with it. So all sorts of stuff to have crafty fun with. And so today for my card, I chose to use the side-looking leprechaun with his little barrel of shamrocks. I also used her rainbow and the pot of gold. So for today's project, I thought that this would be a great opportunity to continue with my Honeybee Stamps Build a Barn series. And I like to do these for occasions. As you can see, this was my Halloween card that I used the Build a Barn and also the little honeybee truck. And then I also did one of these for Christmas. And I had a great plan and idea to do one for Valentine's Day, but I didn't do it. But you never know. I might pop in a Valentine's Day card in, who knows, July. But I did get to do my St. Patrick's Day one, so I'm pretty super happy about that. So when I have digital files, I print them out on copic friendly cardstock, which this is Nina 110 pound weight cardstock, and you can resize them in any size that you want. And I did do several different versions of this when I was printing just because I wasn't sure what my sizing would be. And here I'm using my scan and cut, which just scans the images and then it cuts around them. And I already had pre-cut out all of my Honeybee Stamps die cuts for the barn, which there's a lot of pieces that go with that fabulous set. So I have everything that I need right here. As you can see, I printed several of those shamrocks because I'm going to use that in the barn window. So this cute little leprechaun barn is going to have shamrocks coming out of it rather than straw. As you can see, I have plenty of shamrocks there that I don't end up using. I wasn't sure if I could maybe use them as trees or bushes, but in the long run, I don't end up using all of those. Now I'm going to start the process of building up the card background. The first thing I did was use some low-tack tape and fasten down this stencil from Lawn Fawn. It is called Grassy Meadows. And I wanted you to see my color swatch book. These are all of my oxides in this section. And I knew I wanted a shade of green, but I wasn't sure exactly which ones I would want. So right now I'm looking at the different shades and I'm deciding. And I am picking several because the barn's going to have some, and as well as the lawn. So I did pick Mowed Lawn, Lucky Clover, and Cracked Pistachio for today's card. And I'm going to start the bottom layer of the grass with Mowed Lawn, which is just what it says. It's a perfect grassy color. So when I do this process, I first ink up my brush and then I wipe it a little bit on my mat just so I don't get such a harsh color. I find that this makes it blend a little bit easier and it's not as splotchy. So my card base for this is 5 3/4 by 5 3/4 because I want my finished card to be a 6 by 6, and this gives that a nice 1/8 inch of a frame all around that card panel. So now I'm building up my sky. I'm starting with a nice squeezed lemonade at the bottom, and that coming right off of the grass, and I thought that that would be a nice little contrast and be able to have a smooth transition. And now I'm using my current favorite cloud stencil, which is Rolling Clouds by My Favorite Things, and some spun sugar, and I'm just going to move that stencil around in various spots on my background and make some cloud formations. And I don't like to have like just a white section or cloud. I don't like that, just that pop of cloud like that, not for this type of background at least. So I'm going to build up the color, and now I'm going to use dried marigold and just fill in that. And remember, I knew that my barn was going to be on the right hand side of my card, so I wasn't going to pay as much of attention to that side of the card because it's going to be covered up. So I just placed that stencil just partially through there and filled in some of that white background with that dried marigold. And I thought that that would be nice to have the orange next to the the yellow and kind of like almost like a rainbowy color, which, you know, rainbows go well with leprechauns. And then I did some milled lavender on top of the spun sugar. And now I'm going to go back and blend everything out with my favorite sky color in Tumbled glass. And these are all oxide inks. They are my favorite to do ink blending with. They're just nice and smooth and soft, and I find them easy to blend. And I wanted to add just a little bit more contrast and a little bit more definition in that sky, so I'm going to use the stencil again and just place it in various spots. And again, this is just building up of that background, all different layers. And I use, as you can see, an index card often, just so I don't get smudgy fingerprints, because my fingers are always dirty with ink and all sorts of fun stuff. So now it is time to start working on the barn. My barn shamrocks, I am using a stamp and stencil combo from Tailored Expressions, and it is called Shamrocks. And this is fun. It's a system where you take your center and you stamp that out, and then you use the stencils to build up your different colors. Now this is a foam back stamp, so I did not need that foam in my MISTI. So I'm replacing that with a sticky mat, and that helps hold that barn in place because of the uneven edges, and I can butt that right up against the edge to hold that, where I normally just fit that into the corner. So this just allows me to have it kind of freestanding in the middle. And I'm just going to line that up to the best of my abilities, which, you know, stamping is not always perfect. And now, hindsight, I wish that I had lined this up completely on the left-hand side, knowing that I was going to cut off the right, but at the time I didn't, so I just have to be a little bit strategic when I add my leprechaun. And now I'm using my Remarkable ink from Maker Forte, which this ink, if you haven't tried it, it's absolutely fabulous. I will have it linked below. It has great coverage, and so I'm going to stamp this twice, just to make sure I have all those little spots, because it's a lot of stamping on this. Just going to press that down and stamp it again. So I was happy with that coverage. And now you can see the stencils have little guidelines that match up perfectly with the stamped images. So you just line those up, and I had pre-sprayed this with some pixie spray, and then you just have to let it set, and it's low tack, and you can stick it right down to your paper and not worry about it tearing when you lift it up. And now I'm using that Lucky Clover for my first set of shamrocks, and I'm just blending that in and doing the same thing, taking a little bit of the ink off of my brush and then layering it down on my stencil. And I went heavy on this. I wanted really good coverage. I wanted those to pop, and I think that that did well. So now I'm just going to wipe this down just a little bit, and I think mainly I do that, I guess, just so my fingers don't get as inky as they could. So I'm just going to lift that off, and I did use some repositional tape to add on the back of that barn to make it stick well to my mat. And now this one also has some markings to line right up the stencil to the stamp. And now I'm going to use the cracked pistachio, which is a lighter green, and add this to the background. And this is such a fun system. And I'm using the same brush. As you can see, I used my microfiber cloth and just wiped off some of that excess ink and just went right into the cracked pistachio. And if you hear my dogs in the background, I apologize. My husband just came home. I kicked him out of our shared office space so I could do this voiceover. So he is coming back and the dogs are barking at him. If you've followed me, you know that I have a crazy busy household, and that's just the way it is, and I wouldn't change it. And so now we are going to start our copic coloring. There's lots of coloring involved in this card, so I am going to speed this up, but I have all of my marker caps on the top so you can follow along. You can slow it down on your own if you need to, or you can always write to me and ask, oh, Jen, I didn't see that color. Could you just let me know? But for his cute little leprechaun outfit, I am using YR12, 14, and 15. I often use the triple system. I like a light, medium, and dark. Right here, I'm just testing out different families of greens. I have so much green going on in this card that I wanted to make sure that I had ones that looked well together, but also had enough differences to tell them apart. So I'm using G21, 24, and 28 for his hat. And I like to shadow map, so I first lay down my light color, and then I come back in with my mid-tone, and then I come in with my darkest, and then I blend them all out. And if there's not enough contrast, or if there's too much contrast and not a really good blend line, I repeat, because that's just the way I like to do it. I like to make my paper fairly wet and then just blend that out. And everybody has their own style, and that just happens to be mine. I wanted his beard to have a reddish tinge to it, so I did my E19, YR18, and E97, and I'm just using some flicking motions to try to get some highlights in the middle of the beard. I just love this beard. Isn't it super cute? And I suppose by putting it, like making it red, he does look more leprechaun-like rather than gnome-like, because gnomes are a wicked thing right now, aren't they? But this is definitely Lucky the Leprechaun, which I didn't discuss that with Vinita, so I think it's kind of funny. I did name him. It just came to me that I thought, yeah, we needed to have a name for him, and he is Lucky. Lucky the Leprechaun. So now for his little wheelbarrow, I'm using my favorite wood combination, which is E23, E25, and E27. And I'm doing the same concept of shadow mapping, then my mid-tone, and then the darkest, and then pulling it all back out with that light tone. And like I said, sometimes I go back in, and I wanted some of that wood grain to pop, so I put some of the darker colors on that for some contrast. And now I had to fill in some of the other spots, like his little pom-poms, and I didn't want to go white, so I chose to go with some more golden yellows. And now my shamrocks had to be yet another set of green. So I'm doing YG03, YG25, and then my darkest will be YG17. These images are just so super cute. So make sure I will have VinitaArt Digitals linked below. Make sure you go and check out her Etsy shop. She has amazing products in there. She is a fabulous artist and just amazes me with her ability. And there's a really super cute Easter set that I've got my eye on that I'm hoping to play with sometime, hopefully this month. So now I'm working on the rainbow, and I did a very simple color with this rainbow because when I find that an area is small, I don't shade in that. It's just there's not enough space really to bother. So one shade coloring I find works well with this type of space. So you can see with that green marker, I actually popped off both of my ends. If you do get like a juicy copic marker, one that came that way or one that you just refilled, sometimes if you open up the other end, it will pressurize it better and you won't get that little glop of color that kind of ruins your whole day. So that's just a little tip. I have had many glops of color that have kind of, ruined the day. And when you're doing rainbows, you don't want anything to ruin the day. So I've got that rainbow all set to go, and now I'm just going to start playing with my card a little bit and seeing how I want it to be placed and deciding what comes next. So I needed to still color the shamrocks that were on the top of those extra wheelbarrows that I printed, because we needed to get those for the window. So I just colored that section up, and now I'm going to fussy cut those out. And I did those in the same exact colors as the other shamrocks. Okay, now it's time to play with assembly. I still wasn't exactly sure how I was going to work on this card. I didn't know if those shamrocks were going to be coming down with some hay on top, or if I'm going to put them in a little basket. So you can see my process of playing and just trying out different ways. And if you noticed, I went from a gold background of the door, a gold frame on the door with black centers, to the black frame with gold centers. So I don't know if it really made a whole big difference, but I just seem to like that pop better with the gold in the middle. That was just my personal preference, but feel free to drop me a little line on the bottom or a little comment and let me know which way you think I should have gone with it. And now I'm coloring up the pot of gold in some warm grays. And then I'm going to use some yellowish gold on the top for the coins. YR 24 and 27 I find work really well for that. And I finish up that pot of gold. I have everything I need for my card. Now to start adhering down all the little pieces. I am using my Barely Art glue for these small pieces because I like the precision tip that is on that. Just going to press that down. Sometimes the glitter paper takes a little extra pressure in order for it to stay. And now I'm just going to build up my barn pieces again with that precision glue. It's really handy when you're doing these really intricate die cuts. Pressing that down. And I decided on the window frame is going to be opposite of the door frame. So that is going to still have the gold, and then it's going to have the black centers. And now I'm just filling in the centers with the glue, and then I'm just going to pop that back in. And as you can see, the triangles, yeah, I do know my shapes, the triangles on the ends, they do have a specific way to fit them. So I just had to play with that to get that back into the proper spot. And I'm using all of my fun rainbow Maker Forte tools today, the little tweezers and the magic wand that has an end that you can use to like a jewel picker kind of end, and then it has a paper piercer end, and it's just super pretty. I like the rainbow. And so I decided with the Shamrocks that they're going to be coming out like they were in a flower basket or a flower box, and you see I had to just clip off that little edge just so it didn't show over. And I'm just adding that on with a little bit of glue, and you can see I get gluey fingers always. They're either inky or gluey. Just pressing that down, and I still had a little bit of overhang that I'm just going to trim off. And then I'm going to add that, and I didn't bother putting that last panel in the window at the top because it's going to be covered with the Shamrocks. Going to add that for just a cute little window box. And now I'm going to add the pieces. So the fence and the little windmill both come in the barn builder. And you see I left that in so you could see that my pop dot was a little bit too big for the blades there. So I just went and I cut it and then I added it back. I didn't like all the white showing through. And now I'm ready to add my barn down. You can see that there's that repositional tape, and I did have that on when I was doing the background, but now I'm going to use some liquid adhesive, and I like this mono glue. This is a little bit wider tip, so in a bigger space this is helpful. And I didn't have to put any on that left hand side because we know we're going to be cutting that off, or the right hand side, sorry. And liquid glue gives you that little bit of wiggle, and I had to cover up that one little strip that I didn't put the Shamrocks on the barn when I should have just put that all on the left hand side, but you know, it works. I can get that covered with the leprechaun. I'm just placing that, making sure that I had it right, and I'm going to use a little pressure from my block. For my sentiment today, I'm also using a Tailored Expression stamp. It's part of their mini strip system, and this one is St. Patrick's Day. What is so fun about these is that you stamp them out, and then they have these cool die cuts, the mini strip die cuts that go right over, and boom, you have a bunch of sentiments all done at the same time. And if I had remembered, you know, sometimes I get overwhelmed, but if I had remembered, I also have the mini strips backer, and I could have done a backer for my sentiment as well. And I made another mistake. You know, I make mistakes all the time, and I forgot that I wanted to slip a little bit of that rainbow underneath the barn. So this happens often, I get glue happy, but you know, I make it work. Now I'm going to trim off that excess barn edge, and that is painful. You know, I always worry, and yeah, it's painful doing that, but it looks nice. For my card base, I cut a piece of cardstock 6 by 12, and then I scored it at the 6-inch mark. And now I'm going to use my Maker Forte bone folder, which has a nice crisp edge to help you get a nice crisp edge. I'm just going to bend that down and then make a little mark. This paper was giving me a little bit of a hard time. It's nice thick basil, and I was having just a little bit of a hard time getting the two ends together. That is another great use for bone folders. And now that I have that card base in position, you can see how well that frames the card panel. It gives that nice 1/8 of an inch all around, and I do like that look. It just gives it a nice pop, and it sets the card really well. And now I'm going to balance out the whole barn with weight by putting the windmill and the leprechaun on the opposite side. The windmill was a little bit too long, so I just had to snip off the end so it wouldn't show through the bottom of the wheelbarrow. And then I had to decide on which sentiment I was going to go with today. And I like adding that little fence on the back. It just adds a little bit more interest and takes up some of that blank canvas. And now it's time just to adhere everything down. So I'm going to start with putting that card panel right onto the base. And then I'm going to add all the little elements, and I did lift up the barn just a little bit so I could slip a little of that cloud under. And again, that precision glue comes in really handy when it comes to these intricate die cuts. And I cut just a little bit more off the end just to make sure, just for good measure, to make sure it wasn't going to show through. For some dimension on my card, I used some foam squares on the back of the leprechaun and on the back of the pot of gold. And I'm also going to pop dot up the sentiment and the shamrock that serves as the doorknob. So lots of dimension on this card. Now for some added shine, I'm going to use my clear Wink of Stella pen and put that on the shamrocks, the pot of gold, and the rainbow. And, you know, all those things need to be shiny. And after I added that glitter shine, I decided that it needed even more dimensional shine. So I grabbed my glossy accents and I went over all those areas again. I finished the card up with my pop dotted sentiment, and I had to let that dry overnight for the glossy accents. And then this is the dried card. And you can see, look at all the glitter and shine between the cardstock and then the glossy accents. Super, super pretty card. Thank you so much for spending time with me today and getting crafty. Make sure you check out VinitaArt Digitals at Etsy. I will have the link below for you. She has some amazing products in that store that would be great for card making. Like I said, there's an Easter set that is super duper cute that I cannot wait to play with. This St. Patrick's Day set was so much fun. I love that I got to add to my Build-A-Barn series. Thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate your support. If you would like to see more of my cards, I'd appreciate your subscription to my channel. Thank you again, everybody. Happy crafting!